Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another fantastic edition of Sit Back with Shaq. It's a Wednesday evening coming to you live right here on the PodHub Facebook page. Thanks so much for being a part of the show. The show is brought to you by the Bristol Institute of Business Management. Thank you so much, guys, for being a part of the show. As always, we've got wonderful guests coming on the show, having a wonderful chat with them. And at the same time, since it's season 2, we also feature a musical group, a musical entourage, so to say, today on the show. And of course, a great guest, and it's wonderful always talking to him, and he's going to be featured on the show in just a few minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for us to kickstart the show. It is season 2 of Sit Back with Shaq, Wednesday evening, coming to you live on the PodHub Facebook page, brought to you by the Bristol Institute of Business Management. Gonna take a quick break. We'll be back with the show right after this. We live in a world that requires answers for complex problems. To understand the intricacy of details, we need fresh minds and individuals dedicated to answer the world's calling. At the Bristol Institute of Business Management, we are looking for more of the best minds, more free thinkers, and more problem solvers to gear them for that very call. Here's to those who want more from life, who want more from the things that actually matter. A whole new take, a whole new vision. To those who see much more in the little things, who want more from challenging the bigger things. To those who go for the goal. An arsenal of academics who strive for more. Here's to every one of them. And here's to more and more. A network of leaders who change more than the ordinary. This is much more than just an MBA. This is an MBA that will change the way you work. Welcome to the MBA from the University of the West of England. Thanks so much, and welcome to the show right here on a Wednesday evening. This is Sit Back with Shaq, coming to you live on the PodHub platform right here on the Facebook page, where we feature some wonderful guests and have a hearty chat. That's exactly what we do, because we ask them to sit back, we ask them to relax, and of course have a great chat with us. Today we have Sri Lanka's first ever celebrity chef. He's a restaurateur, he's a personality, and he's a great person to actually have a chat with. We've got Koluu on the show right now as we cross over and have a chat with him. Good evening, Koluu. How are you?
I'm very well, Shaq, and how are you?
I am doing great. I can see that, I don't know where you are, but the scenery behind you is beautiful.
I'm in somebody else's beautiful house, that's why.
Wonderful. Caught you as basically as a social butterfly you are. You're all over the place, and we're glad that we obviously caught you. And once again, thank you very much for accepting our invitation to be a part of the show.
Anytime, Shaq, anytime.
Koluu, okay, let's just take you way back in time to your good old early days. Tell us, how did you basically get into, where did the passion for cooking and the culinary sort of skills come about?
Well, I'm 60 years old, by the way, now, so it's going back long way. And at that time, one had to be, if all the cooking happened in people's homes. You know, they have no restaurants, hotels, there are very few, and those are very expensive for any of us to go. So our house, because my father was a journalist, an international one, there's been a lot of cooking going on in our house. So it was just a matter of getting interested, and it's like a childhood, some sort of a hobby. And always I used to experiment along with going on at home with the people in the house, my mother, everybody. And so finally, cut the long story short, it's a hobby which has become my profession.
Yeah, it is certainly. I mean, obviously, you've taken to this very seriously. And also, there are certain times, of course, you have run your own restaurant. We're going to get into that and find out exactly how difficult it is to actually hold on to a restaurant in Sri Lanka. We'll talk about that. But getting into the food part itself right now. Today, the type of food that's obviously on our table is so much different from the stuff that I suppose you've grown up with. And in terms of food
That's right.
consumption, also, it's completely different. What is the difference in types of food available today compared to how it was when you were growing up and or when you got into cooking?
Well, at that time, people are very health conscious now.
Right.
So it's a case of using different kind of oils, different kind people don't want to eat creams, cheeses, and things like that. But I'm an old cook. I eat really lots of calories, lots of cream, lots of cheese, lots of everything. So I'm not one of these modern type of cooks who just grill something and put a dash of sauce. It doesn't work with me. Uh, Things are available now much more than 45 years ago when I started, uh, and so it's much easier now to cook. To cook today is much easier than what it was 40 years ago.
In terms of when you want to prepare a dish, especially for example, say you have people coming over, how would you sort of go about it? Are you going to start preparing something that they would like? Or are you going to start preparing something that you are really good at that you make sure that they would like?
Here lies the problem in Sri Lanka. You have 8 people for dinner. One is a vegetarian. One doesn't eat pork.
Right?
One doesn't. I like for has some issue with some. It's a real first you have to check what everybody eats.
Right.
Then it is actually quite a nuisance here. And in Sri Lanka, we are yet used to having 100 things on the table. Otherwise, people infrared that they feel that they haven't fed the person properly. So this type of sit down meal and all is very rarely which happens. And
Okay.
I wish I could show you the layout now. I'm at a house where they're going to have a sit down dinner, which everything is so nice and far more civilized. But we are more of a buffet nation, you know.
Okay.
So it's very difficult. But if I were to choose, I will always have a sit down dinner and a small crowd of people at home. Cook what I love. And hopefully, we have to accommodate other people's wishes on what they want to eat and don't want to eat.
So now, what would you call your signature dish that possibly maybe even your grandmother can't top?
Well, I really didn't know my grandmother. Both my grandmothers are dead when I was born.
Okay.
But I don't know. I have changed my the whole style of cooking from when I started now. I've had the fortune of being 10 years in Europe and learning a lot at that time. But
Right.
I'm more into Asian cooking now. Lots of Asian cooking and lots of Sri Lankan cooking. Trying to revive the traditional Sri Lankan cooking because what has happened in Sri Lanka is the modern cook of in Sri Lanka doesn't know anything about Sri Lankan food. They know more about Chinese food than Sri Lankan food.
Right.
So, the use of certain vegetables or certain other ingredients is essential. So, which I'm trying to teach a lot of people who I work with
Right.
to use the traditional ingredients and work with them.
Now, in terms of you, when you are cooking, how often do you experiment with food? Are you someone who basically sticks by the rules one after the other, or how often do you experiment?
But again, so experimenting, I got with my which all my travels, I have picked up what I like.
Right.
Then, for example, I will come here and make my version of it.
Okay.
So we'll say, for example, a very popular dish I do, which is called the Portuguese seafood rice, that a lot of my clients want. It's a famous thing called cataplana or arroz de marisco from Portugal, which I have my version to suit our Sri Lankan palate in a sort of a way and with the availability of Sri Lanka.
Okay. All right. Interesting. So that is that something that you actually stick to experimenting, or are there other dishes that you obviously like to experiment with?
No, well, it's a case of, well, cooking is all about experimenting anyway.
Right.
Even make a recipe, you try to twist it and turn it to suit our palate, what we would like, what our guests would like, what our clients would like. So everything is experiment when it comes to cooking. I don't try to be creative and I'm not Heston Blumenthal or someone who's trying to do some amazing cooking before, right? I stick to what I know.
Are you a big street food fan, Koluu?
I do love street food, even though I don't eat it now into all these current situation. But I do love street food.
So, would you, in terms of your travel around the world, where would you think has got the best street food in the world?
I think Thailand has a huge variety of seafood. Extremely fantastic. I mean, they cater to everybody there, and even the price ranges cater. And their street food is amazing. And Vietnam is another place where street food is amazing.
So, how about Sri Lanka? I mean, in terms of street food in Sri Lanka, what do we have
We
anything
have
like
our
that?
Ekades and of course Golf is green. That's where they in here. And I love the vades and all in Golf is green pub and the kotta roti and now it's cheese kotta roti and now they made the kotta roti with all kinds of things. They're making hoppers with beetroot, they're making spinach, they're doing all kinds of things, but it's fun.
It certainly is. There's a lot of street food that's definitely going around here. Let's move on to the countless number of cooking shows that are on at the moment. Are you a fan of these cooking shows?
Well, I do watch occasionally, but you have to you have to say that the MasterChef Australia picked up a huge interest in cooking for everybody.
Right.
Because we had at one time a generation of Sri Lankans who thought going into the kitchen was very infra. They just thought the food came miraculously to the table.
Right.
But after this MasterChef Australia, it inspired a lot of young people to go to the kitchen and producing this. And now, of course, as you know, everybody in Sri Lanka is an expert. Today they make a strawberry shortcake. Tomorrow they are Matilda's, strawberries, whatever, and they are on what do you call it? Gosh, I'm involved. Uber and they're on Eat Me, Pick Me, and Eat Me, and all this thing. So it's a bit ridiculous, some of it. And the worst part actually at the moment, I'm very involved with a delivery service, which we are going to start just before the COVID situation got very bad here. So our Nakat time wasn't so Nakat, but there's one huge problem I find is that we are concerned, we are doing it with kitchens which has got PHI and all the licenses and all. And whereas the whole lot of other people are just cooking from home and selling, so our prices differ into that.
Okay, so
You know,
obviously we're talking about cooking shows, and you said MasterChef Australia, yeah, interested Sri Lankans to go and maybe possibly start cooking on their own. But the
it's
recent
influence.
yes, it influenced. Now, the recent lockdown that we actually experienced also drove a lot of people to start cooking again at home. And that encouraged a lot of Sri Lankans to basically
Sorry,
enter the kitchen.
I think we broke off for a second or two. I just didn't get your question.
No, in terms of the recent lockdown that we had obviously had lots of Sri Lankans possibly enter the kitchen for the very first time, and there was a lot of individuals who are cooking at that time.
Oh yeah, I have to tell you something. My friend Rani De Silva, who never cooks in his entire life, actually cooking. It's amazing because he used to call me and on the phone, and he used to follow instructions. And I'm proud to say he's also done a hell of a good job. He can actually produce a sort of a decent meal now. So I noticed everybody got into the kitchen and had to. Some had no choice because
Right,
they didn't have any domestics or anybody to help.
right.
So if you didn't cook, you died. So you had to cook. So it was fantastic, and that way it interests a lot of people. And I think everybody should know how to cook something.
That's true. That is so true. That is so true. But what's your view on people who obviously cook and start taking pictures and land it on social media?
Well, I'm also a culprit for that when I do something. But that is promote our food thing. But if I do go somewhere and eat a good meal, I always put it because I always think it's a good way and it's also fair to compliment the chef who also has cooked it. That is one thing. I don't mind this social media and Instagram and all have given open platforms for people to do whatever they like.
Right.
But the problem comes is when they put the most horrible food picture on it, and then you have people saying, "Wow, it's yummy and it's stunning," and all this bitchiness going on here. So it's But I think it's each to its own on where this is concerned.
Okay. We spoke about this briefly earlier on. Is it actually safe to say the current trend is a lot of vegetarian and plant-based food nowadays? Because more people are going into health food. So is there like consumption of meat has gone down and more plant-based food is actually what is required, that people are moving into more health food?
That's true. That's absolutely correct, Colombo especially. And fortunately, we have our traditional meal, our Sri Lankan rice and curry. We have the most amazing vegetables in Sri Lanka. And there are so many different ways of producing it. So vegetarian is always not badly off here.
Right,
So, and lots of people have given up eating red meats,
right.
right? A lot of people have given up even chicken. Sometimes they may eat a bit of seafood. A big, it's all over the world and it's trending here too.
What do you have any pet peeves, pet cooking peeves, Kolu?
Not really.
Or even
Uh,
pet peeves when it comes to food?
yeah. Well, I'm ready to eat anything. I'm ready. I'm ready to eat anything. I never refuse it, and I love eating from other people's places. I love eating on the going to the small, especially when you go out of Colombo into these little kade places where they are the tastiest food, though there are only three items. You know, I have no hates or anything about this food. I either like it or don't like it. But I have learned one thing because I am a professional in this thing. I never voice my opinion anywhere because I think it's completely bad manners to do that if you are in this profession.
So you know, when I take my parents out, especially my mom, who obviously loves to cook, and every time we go out and then it's been served and she's eating, she always starts pinpointing what is lacking. And is that a Sri Lankan thing or is it a parent thing? Because they said I could have done this so much better. They are lacking this spice. They should actually use this spice much more. What is that?
Now that's a very parent thing. I think number one. Not good. It's not good. I have one thing. A lot of people who know me know very well. If I go, especially, I love my Sri Lankan food. But
Right.
if I ever take chutney onto my plate, everybody knows the food is horrid. Because the only time I eat chutney is to cover up all the other foul things on the table. So if I suddenly see me running around back to the table or looking for the chutney pot, at once, the meal is awful. So a lot of people know this of me. But one thing nice about Sri Lankan cooking, everybody cooks. Every home, no single home will make the same malum, no single home will make the same fish ambutial or the curry or the chicken or whatever. Everybody cooks different here. So that's what's nice about Sri Lanka cooking in Sri Lankan home. I wish the people entertain more at home because it's much nicer. A lot of people have started entertaining out. I mean, it was a huge thing those in Sri Lanka to have people home, to invite them to their house, which is happening again because of this COVID situation, which is nice. But I think sitting around a table with people you love is such a nice evening or afternoon to spend.
In terms of the restaurants that we have in Sri Lanka, I mean, sometimes there was a point that you see restaurants popping up like mushrooms all over the place. And then at the same time, you see the same amount of restaurants actually shutting down. Why is opening a restaurant in Sri Lanka such a cool thing to do? I mean, you obviously had a couple of restaurants, you managed it. Why is it looked at as such a cool thing?
Because I don't know, it is some, I don't know, it's either some record, number one. Number two, it is like having a status symbol. Oh, we own such and such a restaurant.
Right,
Most restaurants in this Colombo, I can happily say, unless they're roguish deals, 70% of them are big flops. Running a restaurant is a very difficult thing. There
right.
are few very successful restaurants in Sri Lanka, but somehow I noticed this a lot of these restaurants here manage to keep and then suddenly they close. But it is a big thing for the Sri Lankans to open some sort of a cafe. I mean, the cafes are coming out of your ears here, right? The restaurants, even now, you are not going to believe it. I thought, okay, now people are going to calm down. I had 2 calls by 2 clients asking me to consult on 2 restaurants when I say at this moment it's not the healthy time to open. But I can yet see 1 or 2 opening.
So, but why is it so difficult to actually open a restaurant and run a restaurant coming from a restaurateur yourself and a consultant? What's the problem?
Well, it's huge. I'll tell you what. In those days when I first began here, it was the staff were fantastic. We had people who were amazing. Staff were, one of the biggest problems in this trade is the staff. Staff are they do everything. It's like once you set up a restaurant, you have to become the secret policeman after that. Why? Because you have to control the robbing going on.
Right.
Number two, it's a there are a lot of perishable items. There's a lot of things, and I don't think as much as Colombo is a restaurant place, but we do not have the clientele to fill the restaurants, and
Right.
owing to that, you can't meet your cost.
Right.
My advice to everybody who I call, I say, I'm at the moment only on a takeaway because I told my client, do not open restaurants,
Right.
right? Because it's quite difficult. When the times we did it years ago, they were hugely successful. But then, of course, I worked with many people. Some I've had good relationships now. Like I said, all my restaurants are like bad marriages, ended up in a divorce.
Right.
But you have to be dedicated, focused. If you are going to be, if you notice a very successful restaurants in Sri Lanka, where you find the owner is very dedicated, they are focused, they are sitting there 24/7, watching everything and getting it going. The problem here is people who are not having the money and opening it. So they hire some cook from somewhere who will do their own menu. So the people who own it don't know what is happening. So, basically, you have or a pattern or whatever. Like my case, if my man goes to the kitchen and cook. So that's where another mistake where people do. So today you have your restaurant, you have trained your staff, then the next day or something they have left, then you don't have anyone to be cooking that menu. So these are the problems which are happening here.
Now, you've obviously also are running a very successful instant. What's the right word? Can we say instant dish, which you can actually pull up from a supermarket shelf? How's that actually going off with your spices and the instant curries?
That has been very successful. That
Okay.
has been very successful. It became even more successful during this COVID period. It goes all over the world. There's a huge demand for it, and that's a very easy to. And of course you have to learn. A lot of people experiment with it,
Right.
and a lot of people experiment and also send me feedback on how they have done, and that is very good. That I have to say, that is a brainwave of Trevin, and Trevin and I got together and did it, and it was fantastic. That has taken off very well.
How does that work? I mean, do you have a separate factory that is going on, or where does that actually
There is
happen?
a factory. Oh, they do everything. Everything is done in a factory. I have given the recipe. I I thought I use it in a lot of my cooking because if I don't use it, there's no point of me telling other people how to use it.
Right.
So that's very successful. It's a foolproof method of making a curry. And it's amazing the amount of people who tell that they had never made, things in their life, and then they call and ask me how to use this and how to use that. I'm happy to accommodate those requests, so it's fine.
Wonderful. Koluu, we're just basically coming into the tail end of the interview so far, but before that, what is your all-time favorite dish or favorite restaurant here or anywhere in the world?
That's a difficult one. I love so many places. I love so many places because I traveled a lot, and so I cannot pinpoint any particular restaurant here because I have found this restaurant has something which I like, and the other one has something fantastic. So I can't pinpoint and say one particular dish or one particular restaurant. That's very difficult for me.
All right. Okay. So, Koluu, just before we let you go, we've got something interesting that we do with all our guests, which is called the Final Five. And it's like
Yeah.
five very daring questions. I know it's got absolutely no problem with you answering any question. That's great. That's why I
Yeah.
love having a chat with you all the time. So your five questions could be uncomfortable, but there's no question that's uncomfortable for you. I know that. But here we go. Here's your
I hope
first
so.
question. If you could invite any three people, dead or alive, for dinner, who would they be and why?
Oh dear, three people dead or alive, who would they be and why? Ha 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 ha. Well, I would love to have my friend Richard De Souza back with me. At dinner, my friend Harinder Moldamore back with me. And who else? Third person I would like to have with me. And for dinner, my friend Chandri, who's in London. Three of my favorite people. Two of them sadly are gone.
Right. Okay. Here we go. Here's your second question on the show. If you ever found yourself competing in an international cooking competition, what will be the dish that will knock them over?
Well, I would stick to what I know best now, which is Sri Lankan, and I would do something absolutely creative with Sri Lankan and produce it, try and produce it to please their palate, which I have actually done when I was at the Culinary Institute of America. And I did this amazing, we did the beef s'more there, right?
Right.
And which was a huge hit because it's like a beef, but a curried version of it. So it was fantastic.
Okay. Here's your third question on the show. Complete this sentence. The Sri Lankan cabinet should include the Ministry of.
Honesty.
Yeah, can't wait for that ministry to come up. The Ministry of Honesty. Okay, here we go. Question number 4 on the show. In your honest opinion, what is wrong with society today?
There's too many people social climbing. Too many people want to be stars. Everybody wants to be a somebody here. It's a huge issue in Colombo, especially.
Okay, question number 5. Here's the final question. What would you say is the biggest misconception about you?
That I'm straight.
Thanks, Koluu. Oh my God. It's always an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Barrels of laughter for sure. Thank you so much. And what's the story? Just one final question. I mean, you used to love reading your articles in the newspaper. Whatever happened to them?
They're on there. They're
Where
back
are they?
on now. They're
Where?
Daily Mirror Friday,
Okay.
live column.
Right.
They're
Okay.
back. Well,
Sorry.
I took a 3-month break with the COVID.
Okay. All right. Anyway, wonderful. Thanks, Koluu, for joining us on the show today. Enjoy your dinner,
My pleasure.
and
Yeah. Okay.
we
Thank
will
you, and you
speak.
have a good evening too.
You too. Have a great evening. We'll speak to you soon. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen.
Bye.
Thank you very much. There you go. That's the first ever celebrity chef we have in Sri Lanka, a restaurateur. And my God, he is just so much fun to speak to, even catch up for a cup of coffee. Wonderful guy. Very, very warm-hearted individual. Koluu right here on Sit Back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we got another fantastic music ensemble coming your way. Gonna take a quick break right here on Sit Back with Shaq. On the other side, we've got this band. They call themselves Unscripted. Lots to speak to them and hear them perform live right here on the Pod Hub Facebook page. We'll be back right after this.